I came home from a 12-hour shift and found a rent contract in my room. My parents wanted to charge me to live in their house, calling it fair share, while my sister lived in the same house rent-free. This happened about a year ago, and honestly, I'm still processing how absolutely nuclear everything went. Buckle up because this gets completely wild and the revenge is beyond satisfying. Quick background on me before we dive into this insanity. I'm 26 years old, did 4 years in the Army as infantry, deployed twice to Afghanistan during some pretty intense periods. Came back home to Colorado Springs to help my family get back on their feet while I figured out my next career move. My dad had been struggling with reduced hours at his supervisor job at the local steel mill. Mom was working part-time at some overpriced boutique downtown. And my little sister Brittany was finding herself after dropping out of community college for the third freaking time. I was absolutely grinding my tail off working construction during the day. Concrete crew doing commercial pours. Probably the most back-breaking physical work you can imagine, but decent money at $28 per hour when you factor in overtime. Then I'd race across town to do overnight security shifts at this massive tech campus. 3 nights per week for $18 per hour. Between both jobs, I was pulling in about $4,200 monthly before taxes, which isn't rich by any means, but pretty solid money, especially since I was living at home and constantly helping cover groceries and utilities without even being asked. Or so I thought. That's how things worked. It was a Thursday night in March when my entire world got flipped completely upside down. I had just gotten home from what might have been the most brutal 12-hour concrete pour of my entire career. Absolutely covered head to toe in dust and cement. Shoulders aching so bad I could barely lift my arms. All I wanted in the world was a hot shower and some leftover pizza from the fridge. Instead, there's this official-looking envelope sitting on my dinner plate like some kind of court summons or eviction notice. David Rodriguez typed in all capital letters perfectly centered on expensive cream-colored paper. No return address, no personal handwriting, nothing that suggested this came from family. Dad was sitting across from me scrolling through his phone, deliberately avoiding any kind of eye contact. Mom was at the sink washing dishes with way too much focus and concentration, like she was trying to scrub the pattern off the plates. These should have been major warning signs that something bad was coming. I tore open the envelope with my dirty hands and nearly choked on my water when I saw what was inside. Monthly housing agreement effective April 1st, 2023. Monthly base, rent $1,200. Utilities and internet, $350. Food household contribution, $250. Total monthly payment, $1,800. Payment due date 1st of each month. Late fee, $100 assessed after 5th day of month. At the very bottom, in bold letters, failure to comply with this agreement will result in 30-day eviction notice being served. I sat there staring at this document for what felt like 10 full minutes trying to process what I was actually seeing. My brain couldn't compute that my own parents had created an official rental agreement to charge me for living in my childhood bedroom. What the heck is this supposed to be? I finally managed to ask. Dad finally met my eyes with this completely serious business expression. It's time you started paying your fair share around here, son. You're 26 years old with steady employment and regular income. My fair share. I held up the paper like evidence in court. $1,800 per month for my childhood bedroom that still has Pokemon posters on the walls and a twin bed from middle school. Market rate for a private room in this area averages around $1,200 monthly, Mom said, still aggressively scrubbing the same plate she'd been working on for 5 minutes straight, plus utilities, internet, and food contributions. We're actually giving you a significant family discount when you think about it. I looked around the dinner table with growing disbelief and anger. So where exactly is Brittany's official rental agreement? Did that somehow get lost in the mail or something? Complete and total silence filled the entire room. Brittany is going through a very important transitional period in her life right now, Dad said carefully, like he'd rehearsed this response. She's working extremely hard on building her online business venture and establishing her brand. Her online business venture, right? What he really meant was she was making absolutely ridiculous amounts of money on OnlyFans and Instagram posting, revealing pictures and videos for lonely guys online while living completely rent-free in our parents' house. I'd personally witnessed the constant stream of designer shopping bags being delivered to our front door daily. The brand new BMW she'd bought with straight cash last month. The expensive professional ring lights and camera equipment that was permanently set up in her room taking up half the space. Meanwhile, I'm working 60+ hours per week doing manual labor that's literally destroying my body, joint by joint. And they want to charge me more money than most people pay for actual one-bedroom apartments in nice complexes with pools and gyms. This is completely insane, I said, trying my absolute best to keep my voice level and controlled. I've been helping with groceries, utilities, household expenses, basically everything around here without even being asked to contribute. That was voluntary assistance that you chose to provide. Mom replied in this cold, business-like tone I'd never heard her use before. This is an official rental arrangement with clear terms and expectations. But Brittany doesn't contribute anything at all. She orders expensive food delivery every single day, uses more electricity than the rest of us combined with all her equipment, and I've never seen her buy groceries or pay for anything. Brittany's situation is completely different, Dad said firmly. She's investing in her future and building something meaningful. That night, I laid in my twin bed, the exact same bed I'd slept in since 7th grade, staring at the ceiling and trying to process this complete betrayal from my own family. I'd served my country honorably for 4 years, worked my tail off every single day since coming home, never asked for handouts or special treatment, always contributed without being asked. And this is how my own parents decided to repay my loyalty, sacrifice, and dedication to helping them. I opened my laptop and created a new Excel spreadsheet file. Financial documentation, Rodriguez family exploitation analysis, .xlsx. If they wanted to play hardball business games with their own son and treat me like a tenant instead of family, I'd show them what real strategic planning and documentation looked like. The first month of paying that absolutely ridiculous extortion fee nearly destroyed me financially and emotionally. After taxes, that mandatory $1,800 monthly payment, and basic living expenses like gas and car insurance, I had maybe $600 left over for everything else in my life. I immediately started meal prepping, nothing but rice and beans, like I was back in basic training, completely stopped hanging out with my army buddies and old friends, and picked up literally every single overtime shift available at both jobs. But here's something the military teaches you really effectively. Always gather complete and accurate intelligence before making any kind of tactical moves against your enemy. So that's exactly what I started doing with obsessive precision. I began systematically documenting absolutely everything happening in that house. Every single utility bill I could secretly photograph when nobody was looking. Every grocery receipt when I bought food for the household. Every time Brittany ordered $80 worth of premium sushi delivery through DoorDash, which was happening basically every single day. Every Amazon package that arrived addressed to her, sometimes 4 to 5 packages per day, no exaggeration. What I discovered through this careful investigation made my blood pressure absolutely skyrocket. Our house was a pretty basic 1,400 square foot ranch-style home in a decent but definitely not luxury neighborhood. I spent countless hours researching comparable rental properties online. Entire 2-bedroom apartments with swimming pools, fitness centers, and modern appliances were going for $1,400 to $1,600 monthly in the same area. And my own parents were charging me $1,800 for a single bedroom with shared bathroom access and no privacy whatsoever. But that wasn't even close to the most infuriating part of this whole situation. Since I work construction, I know skilled tradesmen in basically every possible field. My coworker from the job site does HVAC installation and repair work and had actually worked on multiple houses in our exact neighborhood over the past few years. During our lunch break one day, I casually asked him about typical utility costs for houses similar to ours. Electric should be running you maybe $150 to $200 maximum during peak summer months. Gas probably around $100 during winter, he told me matter-of-factly. Internet's probably another $80 to $90. Why are you asking about this stuff? I was supposedly paying $350 monthly for utilities and internet for a modest house that should realistically cost around $300 total for everything combined. Then there was the whole food contribution scam they were running on me. I started keeping incredibly detailed records of what I actually consumed versus what Brittany was burning through on a daily basis. She was ordering expensive delivery food literally every single day. Premium Thai food, high-end sushi. Those fancy organic salad places that charge $18 for basically lettuce and vegetables. Specialty coffee drinks that cost more than my entire lunch budget. The groceries that I personally purchased for the household would completely disappear overnight because she'd constantly invite her equally parasitic friends over to raid our refrigerator and pantry like they owned the place. I was paying $250 monthly for food contribution, while she was easily consuming 600 plus worth of delivery fees alone every month. Money that definitely wasn't coming from any kind of legitimate employment or her mysterious transitional period budget that my parents kept mentioning. The absolute breaking point that sent me over the edge came when I saw her Instagram story showing off a brand new $3,000 Louis Vuitton handbag, perfectly staged with professional lighting and captioned, "Treating myself, blessed entrepreneur boss, babe, living my best life." That night, I did some serious internet detective work that probably wasn't completely legal. I managed to find her OnlyFans account. Yeah, it was exactly as disturbing and gross as you'd imagine seeing your own sister like that, and used some basic mathematics to estimate her actual monthly earnings. Based on her subscriber count, the premium content prices she was charging, her posting frequency, and the tips, I could see this girl was easily pulling in somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000 per month. Let me repeat that number so it really sinks in properly. My sister was making more money in one single month than I earned in 5 months of absolutely backbreaking physical construction work that was destroying my body. And I was the family member getting charged rent to live at home. I added a new spreadsheet tab labeled Brittany's Estimated Income versus Actual Household Contributions Analysis. The financial ratio was making me physically sick to calculate and think about. Chapter 3. The Credit Card Fraud Discovery. 2 months into this rental agreement nightmare, I discovered something that pushed me from frustrated anger into absolutely livid rage territory. I was checking my credit card statement online during a work break. I only used the card for genuine emergencies and always paid the full balance immediately when I noticed multiple charges that I definitely didn't recognize. And I'm talking about a lot of unauthorized charges spread across several weeks. $340 at Sephora makeup store, $156 at Victoria's Secret, $89 at some boutique I'd never heard of in my entire life. Multiple food delivery charges totaling over $400 for a single month. A $79 monthly subscription to some premium content creation platform I'd never signed up for. $67 at a nail salon. $156 for something called Ring Light Pro Studio equipment, all charged to my personal credit card, all completely unauthorized, all for stuff I would never buy in a million years. I confronted Brittany that weekend when she was in the kitchen staging one of her elaborate smoothie bowl Instagram posts, complete with professional ring lighting setup and phone camera equipment consuming half the available counter space. "Did you use my credit card for any purchases recently?" She didn't even glance up from arranging organic berries in perfect symmetrical patterns for her photo. "Yeah, like twice, maybe for emergency situations that couldn't wait." Emergency situations. I pulled out my phone and showed her the detailed statement. $340 at Sephora constituted an emergency. I needed professional-grade supplies for content creation activities. It's a legitimate business expense that I'll write off on taxes. Paid for with my money without my permission. That's called fraud. She finally looked up at me with this eye-rolling expression like I was being completely unreasonable about everything. "God, David, you're being so overdramatic about every little thing. It's not like you can't afford these small amounts. You basically live here for free anyway, so what's the big deal? For free. While paying them $1,800 every single month like clockwork. You absolutely cannot just use someone else's credit card without explicit permission. That's literally credit card fraud, which is a serious crime. You gave me the account number that one time when I needed money for textbooks when I was still in school. That was over a year ago for legitimate educational expenses that we discussed beforehand." She went back to her elaborate photography setup like our conversation was completely over. "Whatever, David. I'll pay you back when I get around to it and have some free time." When I tried discussing this theft situation with my parents later that evening, Dad's response was, "You two need to work out these sibling disputes between yourselves like adults. We're not getting involved in petty arguments over money." Sibling disputes like credit card fraud was just some minor disagreement over television remote control privileges or who got to choose dinner. I spent that entire night going through 6 months of detailed credit card statements with a fine-tooth comb. The total amount of unauthorized charges came to over $2,800. Almost $3,000 of fraudulent purchases for makeup, expensive clothing, food delivery, subscription services, and various equipment for her business operations. But the real punch to the gut that made me see red was discovering a $500 charge to some high-end photography studio downtown. When I reverse searched the business address online, it turned out to be a place that specialized in boudoir and artistic photography services with a portfolio full of suggestive photos. She had used my credit card to pay for professional photo shoots for her OnlyFans content. I was literally funding my own sister's adult content career while she lived completely rent-free, and I got financially bled dry every single month. That night, I opened a new browser window and started researching how to dispute fraudulent credit card charges, but then stopped myself mid-search. Filing official fraud disputes would create immediate problems and complications, potentially even legal ones that could blow up in my face. And I was starting to realize that creating immediate, obvious problems might not be the most effective long-term strategy for dealing with this situation. Instead, I opened new tabs and searched Asset Protection Strategies, LLC, Formation Requirements, Colorado and Property Investment for Beginners. If my family absolutely insisted on treating me like a business transaction rather than their son, maybe it was time I started thinking and operating like a serious businessman who knew how to protect himself. I opened the business banking account on a Tuesday during my lunch break from the construction site, drove 30 minutes across town to a credit union in a completely different area, tucked neatly between a pawn shop and a used car dealership. Perfect location for maintaining complete privacy and staying under anyone's radar who might know my family. The account representative was this older gentleman who looked like he'd seen every possible financial situation in his career and learned not to judge anything. When he asked about the business purpose and planned activities, I kept the explanation simple and straightforward. Property investments, financial consulting services, and asset management. I funded the initial account with my quarterly safety bonus from the construction company, $1,200 that I'd earned for maintaining 0 workplace incidents during the previous 3-month period. It wasn't a massive amount by any means, but it represented a solid foundation that I could build upon strategically. Any particular reason for choosing a separate financial institution instead of your current bank? The representative asked in a professional tone. Just maintaining clean separation between business and personal finances, I explained calmly. You know how important proper accounting practices are for tax purposes and legal protection. I established the entire operation under Rodco Holdings, LLC, named after my family surname, but generic enough to avoid drawing any attention from anyone who might be casually researching business records. All business correspondence was directed to a P.O. box that I'd rented under the company name at a postal facility across town. That evening, I completely upgraded and expanded my spreadsheet documentation system. What had started as basic record-keeping was rapidly evolving into a comprehensive financial intelligence gathering operation that would make my old Army intelligence buddies proud. I created detailed tabs for monthly rent payments and fee tracking analysis, household expenses, break down actual costs versus amounts charged to me. Brittany's unauthorized spending documentation with dates and amounts. Parents' real income and expense patterns based on observation. Local property research and market analysis. Data legal precedent research for financial exploitation cases, asset protection strategies, and business formation options. The deeper I investigated into my family's actual financial situation, the more disturbing the overall picture became. Through extremely careful observation and discreet document photography when nobody was home, I discovered that Dad had been completely lying about his employment situation. He wasn't actually laid off or struggling with reduced hours like he'd been claiming for months. He was still working full-time at the steel mill, just on a different shift schedule, and making approximately $3,800 monthly before taxes. Mom's supposedly part-time boutique position was actually pulling in a solid $2,200 per month. Their combined household income was definitely in solid middle-class territory. So why were they constantly claiming to be financially struggling and unable to pay basic bills? The answer became crystal clear when I started tracking their actual spending patterns and habits over several weeks. Dad was dropping $300+ monthly at the Indian casino, about an hour outside town, taking weekend trips he claimed were job interviews or networking events, but were obviously gambling binges. Mom was spending absolutely ridiculous amounts on MLM pyramid scheme products, essential oils, supplements, skincare systems, weight loss shakes that she'd then attempt to resell to her friends and coworkers at a loss. And both parents were constantly purchasing expensive gifts, clothes, and experiences for Brittany without any expectation of repayment. They weren't charging me rent because they genuinely needed assistance with legitimate household bills. They were charging me rent because they were completely financially irresponsible and viewed me as an easy, reliable source of income to subsidize their poor decisions and fund their daughter's lifestyle. Meanwhile, I started networking with experienced guys from the construction crews about real estate investment opportunities and strategies. Construction work provides access to incredibly valuable inside information. Which neighborhoods are getting major development projects? Which properties have hidden structural problems that aren't obvious to regular buyers? Where smart investors are moving their money and why? My foreman had been successfully flipping houses for over a decade as a profitable side business. During our lunch breaks, he started teaching me about property investment fundamentals, market analysis techniques, renovation cost estimation, and most importantly, how to structure real estate deals for maximum privacy protection and tax advantages. The key to everything in this business, he explained while we ate sandwiches in his truck, is having better information than the other party in any transaction. When you know more than they do about the real situation, you control the entire outcome. I took that advice very seriously and started applying those same principles to my family situation. 4 months into this rental agreement nightmare, my foreman approached me with something that could potentially be completely game-changing for my future. Hey, remember that house where we did the emergency foundation repair work last month? The one over on Maple Street with the cracked basement. I definitely remembered. Really nice neighborhood with solid construction quality throughout. But the property owners were going through an extremely ugly divorce, and both parties wanted to sell immediately and move on with their lives. It's going to public auction next week. Divorce proceedings got really messy with lawyers involved. Neither spouse wants to keep the property, and the bank is highly motivated to move it quickly to avoid foreclosure costs. He showed me the official auction listing on his phone. 3-bedroom ranch-style house, 1,800 square feet of living space, 2-car attached garage, decent-sized yard with mature landscaping, and established trees. Under normal market circumstances, it would easily be worth $280,000 or more. The auction estimate range was listed at $180,000 to $200,000. Cash buyers get significant preference and priority positioning. You interested in potentially partnering up on this deal? I'd been systematically saving every possible dollar for months. Plus, I had access to VA loan benefits from my military service, but I was still nowhere near having that kind of capital available for investment. Then my foreman explained the real opportunity hidden in this situation. Property needs approximately $30,000 in renovation and improvement work, mostly cosmetic improvements and updates that we could easily handle ourselves with our skills and contractor connections. But here's the really interesting part. Location and size mean you could easily rent it for $2,200 to $2,400 monthly. And that's being conservative with the market estimates. He pulled up comparable rental properties in the same area on his phone browser. His numbers weren't exaggerated at all. Similar houses were renting for exactly those amounts. I provide the real estate expertise, contractor network connections, and project management experience. You provide the capital investment and handle ongoing property management responsibilities. We split all profits 60-40 in your favor since you're putting up the actual money and taking the financial risk. That night, I analyzed the financial projections about 50 different ways using various scenarios and market conditions. With my construction experience and his renovation expertise, we could probably complete the entire rehab project for closer to $20,000 instead of the estimated $30,000. At $2,300 monthly rental income, the property would generate positive cash flow from the very first month plus long-term appreciation potential. More importantly than just the money, it would provide me with something I desperately needed: real leverage and complete independence from my family's financial manipulation. I contacted the credit union the very next morning and scheduled a meeting about investment property financing options. As it turned out, my military service record combined with steady employment history and the money I'd been systematically saving qualified me for much better financing terms than I'd originally expected. By Thursday afternoon, Rodco Holdings, LLC had official pre-approval for $200,000 in property investment financing at competitive interest rates. Friday morning, my foreman and I stood on the courthouse steps waiting for the public auction to begin. Bidding started at $160,000. There were maybe 8 other potential bidders present, but most dropped out relatively quickly when it became obvious this wasn't going to be a bargain basement deal. My foreman and I had agreed beforehand on a maximum bid of $190,000 that we absolutely wouldn't exceed. When the auctioneer's hammer finally came down at $185,000, we officially owned our first investment property. Walking away from that courthouse, I felt something I hadn't experienced in many months. Not just hope or optimism, actual power and control over my own destiny. For the first time since this entire family exploitation situation started, I wasn't just reacting defensively to what other people were doing to me. I was making strategic offensive moves that would change everything. The following 6 weeks represented some of the hardest physical work I'd ever done in my entire life, but also the most personally satisfying and meaningful labor I'd ever completed. My foreman and I spent literally every weekend and most weekday evenings transforming that auction property into something genuinely special and move-in ready. We installed new luxury vinyl flooring throughout the entire house, applied fresh paint in modern neutral colors that would appeal to professional tenants, updated all the light fixtures to energy-efficient LED systems, and completely renovated the kitchen with granite countertops and matching stainless steel appliances. I personally did most of the actual physical labor myself, which kept material costs down significantly, while giving me something productive and forward-looking to focus on, besides the ongoing disaster at home. My parents barely noticed my absence during most weekends and evenings. They were too busy enabling Brittany's latest entrepreneurial schemes and lifestyle choices. She'd started some kind of confidence coaching business on top of her OnlyFans operation, charging desperate women $500 for personal empowerment consultations that basically consisted of telling them to show more skin in their social media posts and embrace their feminine power. The girl was pulling in close to $25,000 monthly now between all her various online ventures and business activities. And she was still living completely rent-free, while I paid $1,800 every month for the privilege of sleeping in a twin bed and having my credit card stolen for her business expenses. But I was systematically documenting absolutely everything with obsessive precision. Every luxury purchase she posted on Instagram and TikTok with location tags and price information. Every time she borrowed mom and dad's vehicles instead of using her own BMW because it was in the shop or she didn't want to put miles on it. Every family dinner where she ordered expensive takeout for everyone and then conveniently forgot her wallet when the bill arrived, leaving my parents to pay. The renovation project was nearing completion when I discovered something that fundamentally changed my entire understanding of what my parents were planning. I was replacing a broken sprinkler head in our front yard on a Saturday morning when our next-door neighbor came over to make casual conversation. She's this sweet elderly lady who's lived in the neighborhood for 30 years and notices absolutely everything that happens on our street. "Are your parents getting ready to sell the house?" she asked in a friendly, curious tone. "What? No, definitely not. Why would you think that?" "Oh, I saw a real estate agent taking photographs and measurements last week. Professional-looking woman with a clipboard and measuring tape. Thought maybe they were preparing to list the property for sale." My stomach completely dropped to the ground. What real estate agent? When exactly was this? She described a professional woman who'd spent about an hour photographing the house from multiple angles, measuring various rooms, taking detailed notes on official-looking paperwork, complete professional setup with business cards and official materials. That night, I conducted absolutely thorough online research into local real estate activity. I found the agent's name through the MLS database system that my foreman had taught me how to navigate. Called her office the very next day pretending to be a potential buyer interested in neighborhood properties. "Oh yes, the Rodriguez property on Pine Street," she confirmed immediately. "We're not quite ready to list officially yet, but the owners are definitely considering a spring timeline for selling. Were you specifically interested in that particular area?" My parents were secretly planning to sell our family house, the exact same house they were charging me $1,800 monthly to live in, without telling me anything about their plans or timeline. I hung up the phone and immediately called my foreman. "How quickly can we get our rental property completely ready for tenants?" 2 weeks maximum, maybe 10 days if we really push hard and work some long hours." Why the sudden urgency? "Because I think I'm about to become homeless, and I need to accelerate our entire timeline before that happens." That weekend, my foreman and I worked literally around-the-clock shifts to finish every remaining detail. By the following Friday evening, the house was absolutely rental-ready and looked amazing. We listed it online Saturday morning with professional photographs that made it look like a magazine spread. By Sunday night, we had 12 qualified applications and a rapidly growing waiting list of interested potential tenants. The couple we selected was absolutely perfect for our needs. Young professionals in their late 20s, both with stable employment and excellent credit scores, no red flags in their backgrounds or rental history. They wanted to move in immediately and actually offered $2,400 monthly, which was $100 more than our asking price. My foreman grinned when we signed the lease agreement. "Congratulations, partner, you're officially a successful landlord with positive cash flow." But I wasn't thinking about the rental income or the business success at that moment. I was thinking about the final phase of what I was planning to do next and how satisfying it was going to be. Chapter 7. Nuclear Option and Complete Victory. I moved out on a Wednesday morning while everyone was predictably away from the house following their usual routines. Brittany had her weekly content creation session at some photography studio downtown. Mom was at her book club meeting, and Dad was at the casino pretending to attend a job interview or networking event. I'd been quietly relocating my important possessions to a storage unit for several weeks, so there wasn't much remaining in my room. Essential clothes, my laptop computer, some personal items with sentimental value from my military service. Everything that truly mattered to me fit easily in my pickup truck with room to spare. On the kitchen table, I left my house key and a single piece of paper with a brief, professional message. Effective immediately, I am terminating my rental agreement with this property. Final rent payment was processed March 1st as agreed. All utilities and services registered in my name will be disconnected within 48 hours. Future communication should be directed through Rodco Holdings, LLC, at P.O. Box 2847, Colorado Springs, Colorado. David Rodriguez. No emotional appeals, no detailed explanations, no room for argument or negotiation. Just cold business facts delivered with the same impersonal precision they'd used in that original invoice. But here's where the story gets really satisfying for everyone who's read this far. What my family didn't realize was that I'd been conducting much more extensive research than just property values and rental markets. Over the past several months, I'd been thoroughly investigating their financial situations, business dealings, and most importantly, Brittany's online business operations and legal compliance. It turns out my entrepreneurial sister had been making some seriously major mistakes that were about to catch up with her. First major discovery, she'd never reported any of her substantial OnlyFans income to the IRS. We're talking about $200,000 plus in completely unreported income over the past year and a half. That's federal tax evasion territory with serious legal consequences, including potential prison time. Second discovery, she'd been using our parents' home address for all her business correspondence, tax documents, and legal paperwork, which meant when the IRS eventually came investigating, and they definitely would, they'd find Mom and Dad listed as potential accessories to tax fraud. Third discovery, and this was the most beautiful part. She'd been advertising and filming her OnlyFans content using photos and videos taken throughout our parents' house, master bedroom, living room, kitchen, backyard, basically every room, which meant they were technically operating a commercial adult entertainment business out of a residential property in direct violation of approximately 6 different city ordinances and HOA regulations. But I didn't just anonymously report these violations to the appropriate authorities immediately. That approach would have been too simple and straightforward. Instead, I waited patiently for the perfect timing to maximize impact. About 2 weeks after I'd moved out and established my independence, I received the phone call I'd been anticipating. Dad's voice was tight with barely controlled panic and stress. "David, we really need to talk immediately. Can you come over to the house right now? I don't live there anymore, remember? You can schedule an appointment through my business email address if needed." "You're what, David?" "This is extremely serious. We received some very official letters today that we don't understand." I knew exactly which letters he was referring to. The IRS audit notification for Brittany requiring immediate response. The city code enforcement violation notices with substantial fines. The HOA fine documentation totaling $15,000 in penalties. The real estate agent contract cancellation letter due to legal complications. You see, once I'd moved out and established my complete independence, I'd made several strategic phone calls over the course of a week. Anonymous tips about unreported income to the IRS fraud hotline with specific details and evidence. Detailed complaints about commercial activity in residential areas to code enforcement with photographic proof. Comprehensive evidence of HOA violations to the Homeowners Association Board with documentation. I can meet you at the coffee shop downtown, Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. sharp. When they arrived for our meeting, they looked like they'd aged 10 years in just 2 weeks. Dad's hair seemed grayer and thinner. Mom had visible stress lines around her eyes, and Brittany looked like she'd been crying for days straight. I sat across from them wearing my best business casual outfit and maintaining a completely neutral professional expression with a thick folder of official documents beside my coffee cup. So I said calmly, What seems to be the problem? Dad slid a thick stack of official government letters across the table with shaking hands. IRS audit notification requiring immediate response. City code violation notices with escalating fines. HOA violation documentation totaling $15,000 in penalties. A notice that their homeowner's insurance had been canceled due to undisclosed commercial activity on the premises. "We don't understand what's happening to us," Mom said desperately. "Everything hit us at once like some kind of coordinated attack." I flipped through the papers methodically, like I was seeing them for the first time. Wow, this is pretty serious stuff. Federal tax issues, city violations, insurance problems. "Can you help us figure this out?" Dad asked with desperation in his voice. "Help you in what specific way?" Maybe you could move back home," Mom suggested. "Hopefully help us navigate this situation. We could definitely adjust the rent arrangement to something more reasonable." I pretended to consider their proposal very carefully. "What kind of adjustment were you thinking?" "We could lower it to $1,500 monthly," Dad said quickly, like he was offering me a great deal. "Maybe even $1,200, Mom added when I didn't respond immediately with enthusiasm. I let the silence stretch uncomfortably until Brittany finally exploded emotionally. "This is completely ridiculous. David, just help us. You know I can pay whatever stupid fees these are." "Actually," I said calmly, opening my documentation folder, "that's a significant part of the problem we're dealing with here." I spread out copies of everything I'd been systematically documenting for months. Bank statements showing her unreported income patterns, screenshots of her social media posts, advertising content filmed inside their house, printed copies of city ordinances she'd violated, tax code explanations, highlighting her legal obligations and penalties. "Brittany, based on my research and calculations, you owe approximately $78,000 in federal taxes, plus substantial penalties and interest charges. The city fines will total around $25,000 if you don't immediately cease all commercial operations. And since all of this illegal activity was happening at Mom and Dad's registered address, I turned to face my parents directly. You're considered legal accessories under federal law." The color completely drained from Dad's face. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means the IRS can pursue your assets too. House, vehicles, bank accounts, retirement savings. Everything you own can be seized to pay these debts." Brittany was staring at the documents like they were written in a completely foreign language. But I didn't know I had to pay taxes on that income. Nobody told me. Ignorance of tax law isn't considered a legal defense," I explained matter of fact. "But there might be a potential solution to this situation." Hope flickered desperately in Dad's eyes. "What kind of solution?" "Well, you need immediate cash flow to start paying these substantial debts before they get worse. You need someone with business experience to help navigate these complex legal issues. And you need to completely restructure your entire financial situation to ensure compliance." I pulled out another set of official documents from my folder. Rodco Holdings, LLC, is prepared to offer a comprehensive debt management and property improvement package that could solve all of these problems. The proposal was absolutely beautiful in its elegant simplicity. Rodco would purchase their house for $220,000, which was about $30,000 under current market value, but enough to cover their existing mortgage and some of the tax debt. They could then rent the property back from me for $2,200 monthly. While they sorted out their legal and financial situations, Brittany would be required to immediately shut down all content creation activities and find legitimate employment to start paying her substantial tax obligations. All her future income would be monitored and managed through Rodco to ensure full legal compliance. Mom and Dad would keep their current jobs, but all their finances would be managed through a strict budget system that I would personally oversee to prevent future problems. "This is completely insane," Brittany said, her voice rising. "You want us to pay you rent to live in our own house?" "It's not your house anymore," I replied calmly. "You're about to lose it anyway, when the IRS places a lien on the property for unpaid taxes. This arrangement allows you to stay here." "How much monthly rent are we talking about?" Dad asked quietly. $2,200 current market rate for a property this size, plus utilities, which you'll pay directly. That's more than you were paying us." "No," I corrected firmly. "That's what you should have been charging someone who was actually capable of paying it consistently without stealing from family members." I stood up and gathered my paperwork methodically. "You have exactly 48 hours to make your decision. After that deadline, you're on your own with the IRS and the legal system." They called me exactly 6 hours later and accepted the entire offer without negotiation.